My twin sister stole my identity to commit fraud. I fought back, and you won't believe what happened next. I never thought my own sister would steal my identity, let alone ruin my life. But she did. She drained my bank accounts, took out loans in my name, and left me drowning in debt while she lived like a queen. And the worst part? My own father believed her lies and kicked me out instead. But I didn't disappear. No, I fought back. And what I uncovered? It was so much worse than I ever imagined. Want to know how I exposed her and turned the tables? Keep watching, because trust me, you won't believe what happens next. I never imagined my life could crumble in a single night. One minute, I was Isla Vaughn, a 35-year-old woman with a steady job, a decent credit score, and the unwavering belief that family stood by you no matter what. The next, I was a fraud, a thief, and a disgrace to the very people I loved the most. My father's furious glare burned through me, his voice thundering through the room as he hurled accusations. I couldn't even process fast enough. How could you do this to us, Isla? He bellowed, slamming his fist against the kitchen table. The sheer force of his anger rattled the glasses on the counter. I sat frozen in my chair, my heart pounding so hard, I thought my ribs might crack under the pressure. Across the room, leaning casually against the counter like she was just another bystander in this nightmare, stood Celeste, my older sister, my supposed protector. Her arms were crossed, lips pressed into a thin line, her expression one of carefully curated disappointment. She looked at me the way one might look at a stray dog that had just tracked mud into the house, pitying, but detached. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice, but when I spoke, it came out hoarse and shaky. "Dad, I didn't do this," he scoffed, shaking his head as he paced back and forth. "The court orders, the debt collectors, the defaulted loans, you expect me to believe it's all some huge misunderstanding? That they just, what? Randomly picked your name out of a hat?" I opened my mouth, but Celeste beat me to it. "Come on, Isla," she sighed, tilting her head just slightly, her voice laced with manufactured concern. "You have to see how this looks. Every single document has your name on it, your signature, your social security number." She let the words linger like a knife twisting in my gut. "If you're innocent, then how did all of that happen?" I turned to her sharply, my hands curling into fists. "That's what I'm trying to figure out, Celeste." My voice cracked under the weight of my desperation. Someone stole my identity. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I swear to you, I never took out those loans. Celeste's eyes flickered for just a second, something unreadable passing through them. But then she shook her head, exhaling like this entire situation was exhausting for her. I don't know, Isla," she murmured. "Maybe it's time to be honest with yourself. With all of us." A fresh wave of panic surged through me. "Are you serious right now? You know me, Celeste. You know I would never—" "That's enough." My father's voice cut through my protest like a blade. He stopped pacing, turning to face me with an expression I had never seen before, not just anger, but something far worse. Disappointment. I felt my breath hitch, my stomach twisting into knots. "Dad." His jaw clenched, his shoulders rising and falling with each labored breath. "I have always tried to be patient with you, Isla. But this?" He gestured wildly toward the stack of legal documents spread across the table. "This is beyond anything I ever expected from you." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Dad, please, you have to believe me, no." His voice was quieter now, but somehow it cut even deeper. "Until you take responsibility for what you've done, you are not welcome in this house." The air was sucked from my lungs. My vision blurred, my ears rang, and for a split second I thought maybe I had misheard him. "What?" "You heard me," he said, his voice cold, final. "Pack your things and leave." The room spun around me. I turned to Celeste, pleading, searching for some hint of the sister I had grown up with, the one who used to braid my hair and defend me from bullies. But all I saw was quiet satisfaction in her eyes before she masked it with another sigh. I hate that it's come to this, she murmured, shaking her head as if she was truly saddened by the turn of events. But maybe some time away will help you reflect. I could barely breathe. You're loving this, aren't you? I whispered. Celeste stiffened for half a second before tilting her head, feigning confusion. Isla, don't be ridiculous. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You've always been the perfect one. And now you get to watch me take the fall for something I didn't even do. My father's expression hardened. Celeste isn't the problem here, Isla. You are. Don't make this harder than it has to be. That was it. The final blow. My legs felt like lead as I stood, the weight of my father's judgment pressing down on my shoulders like an anchor. I didn't argue. What was the point? He had already made up his mind. I packed my bags in silence, each piece of clothing another painful reminder of the life I was being forced to leave behind. The walls of my childhood room suddenly felt foreign, suffocating, like they belonged to someone else entirely. Celeste lingered in the doorway, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite place. I wish it didn't have to be this way, she said softly. I clenched my jaw, shoving another sweater into my duffel. Yeah, me too. Her voice dropped, almost gentle. Maybe, with time, you'll figure out how this happened. I froze, the way she said it like she already knew exactly how it had happened. I turned to her slowly, my grip tightening on the strap of my bag. I didn't do this, I said quietly, my voice trembling but firm. Celeste met my gaze, her eyes unreadable. I hope you figure it out, she murmured, stepping back into the hallway. The moment she was gone, I exhaled shakily, pressing a hand against the dresser to steady myself. Something didn't add up. None of this made sense. And yet, here I was, banished from my own home, cast out into the cold for a crime I didn't commit. The night air stung as I stepped outside, my duffel slung over one shoulder. The house behind me, the only place I had ever truly called home, now loomed in the darkness, no longer a sanctuary but a prison of betrayal and accusations. I paused at the edge of the driveway, glancing back at the glowing window. My father hadn't even come out to watch me leave. He had made his decision, and that was that. Celeste's words echoed in my mind. I hope you figure it out. They felt hollow, and yet they clung to me like a thorn, embedding deep under my skin. How had things gotten so twisted? Why was everything pointing to me when I hadn't done anything wrong? As I walked down the street, gripping the strap of my bag, I told myself one thing. I might not have the answers now, but I wouldn't stop until I found them. The cold night air bit into my skin as I walked aimlessly down the dimly lit street, my duffel bag pressing heavily against my shoulder. My breath came in sharp, uneven bursts, each one fogging up in the chilly air as if it, too, were trying to escape the reality pressing down on me. I was homeless, banished, rejected. My father, the man who had raised me, who was supposed to believe in me no matter what, had just thrown me out like garbage. And Celeste, God, Celeste. I could still see her standing in the doorway, that infuriatingly composed expression on her face, like she was already rewriting the story in her head, making herself the victim, the dutiful daughter forced to watch her reckless sister self-destruct. But this wasn't self-destruction. This was sabotage. My phone vibrated in my pocket. For a split second, hope flickered in my chest. Dad had changed his mind. Maybe he realized how absurd all of this was, how little sense it made for me to suddenly turn into some kind of scam artist overnight. But when I pulled it out and saw the number on the screen, my stomach clenched. Another debt collector. The third one today? My fingers hovered over the answer button before I let out a bitter laugh and silenced the call. What was I supposed to say? Sorry, but I have no idea what you're talking about because I never took out those loans. It wasn't like they'd believe me any more than my own father had. With nowhere else to go, I found myself trudging toward the nearest motel. The neon vacancy sign flickered erratically as if it were barely holding itself together. Much like me. I stepped inside, the scent of stale coffee and cheap disinfectant hitting me instantly. The man behind the counter barely glanced at me as I slid my last few crumpled bills across the desk in exchange for a key. Room 207. Second floor, no elevator. Perfect. The door creaked as I stepped inside, flicking on the single overhead light that cast a sickly yellow glow over the faded carpet and lumpy mattress. It smelled of dust and forgotten things. I dropped my bag by the foot of the bed and collapsed onto the mattress, staring up at the cracked ceiling. My body ached, my head throbbed, but sleep was impossible. My mind wouldn't stop replaying every detail of the night, the way Dad had looked at me like I was a stranger, the smug satisfaction barely concealed behind, Celeste's feigned sympathy, the way the ground had shifted beneath me as my entire life was ripped out from under me. I sat up abruptly, my pulse quickening. This wasn't just some cruel twist of fate. Someone had done this to me. Someone had stolen my name, my credit, my life, and I knew exactly who had the means to pull it off. Celeste. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea rolling through me. Could she really have done something like this? My own sister? The one who had always seemed to have everything effortlessly handed to her while I had scraped by, unnoticed, invisible? But why? What did she gain from destroying me? I grabbed my phone, fingers trembling as I opened my bank app. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw the damage. Overdraft notices. Suspicious transactions in places I had never been. New accounts I had never opened. A notification popped up. An alert about a new line of credit opened in my name. Just today. My hands clenched around the phone. Someone was still actively using my identity. Right now. I bolted upright, my heart pounding. If Celeste had been behind this, she wasn't done. She was still out there, playing her game, and I was the only one who knew the truth. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed proof. The next morning, I forced myself out of bed, running on nothing but rage and determination. If I wanted to fight back, I needed to figure out exactly how deep this went. The first stop was the bank. I braced myself as I stepped inside, the air thick with that sterile, artificial scent of paperwork and forgotten promises. The teller, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, glanced up as I approached. "How can I help you?" I licked my dry lips, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I need to review some transactions on my account. I think someone's been using my identity." She typed something into the computer, frowning slightly. "Your ID, please?" My hands were ice cold as I slid my license across the counter. She studied it, then glanced at the screen, her frown deepening. "You were just here a week ago, weren't you?" A sharp chill ran down my spine. "No," I said slowly. "I wasn't." She blinked, her confusion evident. "But you signed the documents yourself. I remember because we talked about the weather." I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "That wasn't me." The woman hesitated, then turned her screen toward me. My heart stopped. The image staring back at me was my own. Same blonde hair, same eyes, same face. But it wasn't me. Celeste. The ground seemed to shift beneath me as I stared at the screen, my vision tunneling. She had done it. She had actually done it. I need copies of those documents," I managed to choke out. The teller hesitated. "I can't let you take them, but I can print out a report of the transactions and locations." I nodded quickly, barely able to breathe as she handed me the papers. My hands trembled as I scanned the addresses. Every single fraudulent account had been opened in the city Celeste had lived in 2 years ago. That was it. The final nail in the coffin. She had stolen my identity. And now I had the first piece of proof. I walked out of the bank in a daze, gripping the papers like a lifeline. The rage inside me had transformed into something colder, sharper. Celeste had played her game well. She had manipulated Dad, turned him against me, left me stranded with nothing. But she had made one mistake. She thought I would just accept it. She thought I wouldn't fight back. She was wrong. At this point, I knew someone had stolen my identity. But who? And why? The evidence was piling up, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to uncover. My own sister, pretending to be me? Walking into banks, signing my name, living my life like she deserved it more than I did. The question is, how do you think I confronted her? Did I go straight to the police? Or did I set a trap to catch her red-handed? Comment 1 if you think I called the cops right away, or 2 if you think I played the long game. Let's see who guesses right. I gripped the papers in my hands, my pulse hammering in my ears as I stepped out of the bank and into the brisk morning air. My fingers curled around the edges of the documents, wrinkling them as if somehow crushing the paper would make the reality of what I'd just seen easier to process. Celeste had stolen my identity. She had stood right where I had just been, smiled at that bank teller, signed my name, and walked out with my future in her hands, like it was nothing more than a shopping receipt. I wanted to scream, to turn around and demand they arrest her on the spot, but I knew that wasn't how this worked. This was just the first step. I needed more. I forced myself to breathe, to steady the chaos storming inside me. If Celeste had gone this far, she wouldn't have stopped at one bank. There had to be more accounts, more lies, more proof. My hands tightened into fists. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. With nowhere else to go, I headed to the only place that still felt somewhat stable work. The small boutique downtown wasn't exactly a dream job, but at least it gave me a paycheck and a place to keep my mind occupied. As soon as I stepped inside, the scent of fresh linen and expensive perfume filled the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil boiling inside me. "Hey, you look like hell," Tess said from behind the counter, popping a piece of gum into her mouth as she eyed me. I let out a hollow laugh. "Thanks, just what I needed to hear." She shrugged, unbothered, and leaned against the register. "Rough night?" I hesitated for half a second before nodding. I didn't have the energy to sugarcoat anything, more like a rough life. "I think my sister stole my identity." Tess blinked. "Okay, wow. That's definitely worse than a bad date." I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "It's not just some little mistake, Tess. She's taken out loans in my name, drained my accounts, and left me to deal with the fallout. My dad kicked me out because of it." Her expression darkened, the teasing gone from her tone. "That's messed up. What are you going to do about it?" "I need proof," I muttered, glancing down at the papers in my hand. Real, undeniable proof. Not just a bank teller remembering her face. I need something that even my dad can't ignore. Tess studied me for a moment before smirking. "You know, I love a good revenge plot. Let's find you some damn proof." I stared at her. "You really don't have to get involved." "Please," she scoffed. "This is the most exciting thing that's happened all month. Plus, I've got a cousin who works in finance, knows how to dig up records. Might be able to point us in the right direction." Hope flickered in my chest. "Seriously?" "Seriously," she said, already pulling out her phone. "Give me a sec." I watched as she typed out a message, the rapid clicks of her nails against the screen the only sound filling the space. A minute later, her phone buzzed, and she grinned. "He says we should start by checking your credit report," she said, looking up at me. "See every single account opened under your name. If Celeste has been running this scam for a while, there'll be a trail." I swallowed hard, nodding. "Let's do it!" An hour later, we were huddled over my laptop in the back room, my stomach twisting with every new discovery. Account after account, loan after loan, Celeste had been at this for 2 years. She had taken out credit cards, personal loans, even financed a damn car under my name. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. How the hell did she pull this off? "She looks just like you," Tess said grimly. "That's how." My mind reeled as I tried to comprehend the scale of what she had done. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. This was calculated, planned. She had deliberately used my name, my identity, and had been profiting off it for years. My breath came in short, uneven gasps. My life, my future had been stolen, and I had been too blind to see it. Tess tapped the screen. Look at this. There's a new account opened just last week. That means she's still using your name. She's not done. The realization hit me like a freight train. Celeste wasn't just some opportunist who had gotten lucky. She was still actively screwing me over. I clenched my jaw, my nails digging into my palms. Then we stop her. Tess grinned, leaning back. Now that's the spirit. The weight of the truth settled in my chest like a stone. Celeste hadn't just stolen from me, she had been living as me. For 2 years. Every loan, every credit card, every fraudulent signature, every transaction traced back to my name, my identity. I had spent my entire life as the overlooked sister, the quiet one, the one who never caused problems. But now I was the one drowning in debt, my reputation in ruins, my own father convinced I was some kind of con artist. And Celeste? She was still out there, untouched, unchecked, living a life I was paying the price for. The rage inside me had shifted into something colder, sharper. If she thought I was going to roll over and accept this, she was dead wrong. Tess drummed her fingers against the counter. Her gaze locked on my laptop screen as she scrolled through the financial records we had just pulled. Okay, she muttered. So she's still active. That's good. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, fantastic. My sister's still committing fraud in my name. What a relief. She shot me a look. No, I mean, it's good because it means we can catch her in the act. If she were laying low, it'd be harder to prove. But she's still using your name. That's a mistake on her part. I rubbed a hand down my face, exhaustion pressing heavy on my shoulders. So what do we do? Walk into a bank and hope she strolls in behind us? Tess grinned. Not exactly. But we can follow the money. She pointed to the screen. Look at this transaction. This card was used at a boutique last night. Her boutique. And this one? A salon across town. If we track where she's spending, we might find a way to corner her. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat picking up. She was right. Celeste had been careful about covering her tracks, but she wasn't being careful enough. If she was still actively using my identity, she had to be doing it somewhere she felt safe, somewhere familiar. We need to go to these places, I said, standing so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. Talk to people, see if they recognize her. Tess grabbed her jacket. I was hoping you'd say that. The first stop was the boutique. It was one of those high-end places with overpriced clothes that made me feel out of place just standing in the doorway. The sales associate, a woman in her mid-40s with perfect hair and an expression that suggested she was too good for this job, barely glanced up from her phone as we approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone making it clear that she would rather not. I forced a polite smile. "Actually, I think you might have helped my sister last night. She came in around this time. Blonde, same height as me, looks exactly like me." The woman's eyes flickered over me, her brows knitting slightly. "Oh, yeah, I remember her." She tilted her head. Though I could have sworn she said her name was Isla. My stomach twisted. "She did." Tess leaned in, her voice casual but firm. "Do you happen to remember what she bought?" The woman sighed, clearly unimpressed with the interrogation. "A dress, black silk, cost more than my rent." "She paid with a card under your name, I assume?" I nodded, forcing my hands to stay still, despite the burning anger rising inside me. "Look, she comes in here all the time," the woman added, flipping her hair over one shoulder. "Spends like crazy. She's a regular." I clenched my jaw. "Right. Thanks." Back outside, Tess let out a low whistle. "She's bold, I'll give her that." I was shaking. Not from fear, not even from anger anymore, but from the sheer audacity of it all. Celeste had been walking into places, spending my money, using my name, acting like she was me without a second thought. And people had believed her. "Let's try the salon," I said, my voice tight. The receptionist at the salon was much friendlier. She smiled brightly as we walked in, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Oh, back again so soon?" I froze. Tess recovered faster. "Yep, just couldn't stay away," she said smoothly. The receptionist beamed. "Well, your hair turned out gorgeous last time. Seriously, best blonde balayage I've ever done." My scalp tingled, my stomach lurching. I hadn't had my hair colored in over a year. She kept talking, oblivious to the shock on my face. "Oh, and your friend, what was her name? Celeste, right? She was just raving about how good the color looked on you. Said you'd be coming back." I swallowed hard. "Right, Celeste." The girl leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I totally get it. I mean, I'd be jealous too if I had a sister who looked just like me but could never quite pull off the same style." She winked. "Not that I'm saying she's copying you or anything, but..." Tess cleared her throat before I could snap. "That's super helpful. Thanks." We walked out of the salon in silence, but my head was spinning. Celeste wasn't just using my name, she was becoming me. Tess finally broke the silence. "Okay, that was unsettling. I could barely breathe. She's playing a game. A sick, twisted game. And no one even realizes they're part of it." Tess nodded slowly. "Yeah. But now we know where to find her." She was right. Celeste thought she was untouchable. Thought she could keep weaving this web. Keep convincing the world that I was the liar while she walked around wearing my life like it was her own personal costume. But she had made one mistake. She had underestimated me. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The car idled outside the last known location where Celeste had used my name, a trendy little cafe downtown, the kind of place with overpriced lattes and minimalist decor designed to make people feel important just for existing in the same space. My stomach churned as I stared through the window, half expecting to see her sitting there, sipping on a coffee she didn't pay for with her own damn money. But the cafe was quiet, just a few people scattered at tables, lost in their laptops and conversations. No sign of Celeste. Not yet. Tess sat beside me, scrolling through the credit report on her phone. "She's got transactions all over the place," she muttered, shaking her head. "Hotels, spas, boutiques, she's living like a damn celebrity on your credit." She let out a low whistle. "I mean, you gotta give her points for confidence." I turned to her, my pulse still racing. "This isn't confidence, Tess. This is entitlement." My grip on the wheel tightened. She's always had it. That smug, untouchable attitude. The golden child. The one who could do no wrong. I scoffed, shaking my head. She probably thinks she's too smart to get caught. Tess glanced up at me, her expression unreadable. "So let's prove her wrong." The weight of those words settled in my chest like an anchor. Proving her wrong meant more than just catching her in the act. It meant exposing her, forcing her to face the consequences of everything she had done. But could I really do that? Could I really be the one to rip that mask off in front of everyone, our family, our friends, her carefully curated world? Then I thought about my father's voice, sharp with disappointment. The way he had looked at me, like I was nothing. Yeah, I could do it. Tess tapped her phone, breaking me from my thoughts. "Okay, so if she's still using your name, we need to go where she feels safest. Where she knows no one will question her." She turned the screen toward me, her gym. My jaw clenched. Celeste had been a member at a high-end fitness club for years. The kind of place with eucalyptus towels and juice bars, where people wore expensive leggings and pretended they weren't judging each other. I had never stepped foot inside, but apparently I had been checking in almost every day. I started the car. Let's go. The gym was in an upscale part of town, nestled between boutique clothing stores and gourmet bakeries. I parked down the street, my pulse hammering as we approached the entrance. Tess gave me a look. "You sure about this?" I exhaled sharply. "No, but we're doing it anyway." The receptionist, a young guy with an over-gelled haircut, barely looked up as I walked in. "Welcome back, Isla," he said automatically. tapping at his computer. My stomach flipped. He didn't even hesitate. Tess shot me a glance, but I kept my voice steady. Actually, I need to check something on my account. Can you pull up my last visits? The guy nodded, typing away. Yeah, sure. Looks like you've been here, wow, almost every morning this month. You've been killing it, huh? He chuckled. I forced a smile. Yeah, that's me. Super committed. He turned the screen toward me, and my heart nearly stopped. The timestamps. The photos. Every time Celeste had checked in, they had taken a small security snapshot. And there she was. My face. My hair. My name on the screen, but not me. Tess leaned in. That's weird, she said casually. Can we print those? The guy hesitated. I don't think I'm supposed to. I dropped my voice, adding just the right amount of panic. Listen, I think someone's been accessing my account. I really need those records. He wavered, glancing at me again, and I saw the moment doubt settled in. I wasn't sure if it was the urgency in my voice or the flicker of something in my expression, but he nodded, clicking a few more buttons before the printer whirred to life. When he handed me the papers, my fingers trembled slightly. There it was, proof. Time-stamped images of Celeste walking through the doors, using my name like it was hers. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. Thanks. Back in the car, I stared at the papers in my lap. Tess let out a breath. Well, that's pretty damn incriminating. I didn't answer. My mind was spinning, trying to process just how deep this really went. Celeste hadn't just used my credit. She had built an entire second life as me, and no one had questioned it. No one had stopped her. Until now. Tess nudged me. Hey, you okay? I blinked, gripping the papers tighter. No, but I know what to do next. Celeste thought she had won. She thought she had buried me under all these lies, that I'd disappear quietly while she kept living her perfect little life. But she was wrong, and I was about to prove it. The drive back to my motel was a blur. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white, my mind racing with everything I had just seen. Celeste wasn't just using my name. She was living a full-on double life as me. The boutique, the salon, the gym. How many other places had she walked into, smiling sweetly, flashing my ID, making people believe she was me, and not one person had questioned it. I pulled into the parking lot, killed the engine, and just sat there for a moment, staring blankly at the dashboard. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. How had she pulled this off for so long? How had I been so blind? Tess shifted beside me, breaking the silence. You good? I let out a sharp breath. No, but I know what I need to do next. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay. What's the plan? I turned toward her, gripping the folder of stolen identity evidence in my lap. Celeste has been careful, too careful. She's built this lie piece by piece, but there has to be something she missed. Something big. If I can find it, I can bring this whole thing crashing down around her. Tess tapped her fingers against the dashboard. All right, but where do we start? I flipped through the papers, my eyes scanning the transactions, the locations, the timestamps. And then I saw it. A loan. A huge loan. Celeste had taken out a personal loan under my name, 20 grand from a credit union a few towns over. That wasn't just a quick scam. That was something she planned on keeping. And to do that, she would have needed more than just my name. She would have needed documents. Real ones. I think she forged more than just my signature, I murmured. My stomach twisting. Tess leaned in. What do you mean? If she got this much money, the bank must have required more than just an ID, I said. My voice growing steadier. She had to show pay stubs. Proof of income. Maybe even tax documents. I swallowed hard. Which means she didn't just steal my name, she stole my entire financial history. Tess let out a low whistle. Damn, that's next-level fraud. I exhaled sharply. And that means there's a trail. A paper trail. She sat back, arms crossed. Okay, so how do we get it? I tighten my grip on the folder. We go to the credit union. We make them show us the documents she used. Tess let out a dry laugh. Oh yeah, because banks love handing out private records to random people. I won't be a random person, I said firmly. I'll be me. It was a gamble, a huge one, but it was the only way. The next morning, I walked into the credit union, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The woman at the counter gave me a polite but distracted smile. Hi there, how can I help you? I placed my ID on the counter. I need to review the loan under my name. She typed into her computer, then frowned. Looks like you were just here last month. My pulse quickened. Yeah, I just need to double check something. Can you pull up the documents I submitted? She hesitated. I can't give you copies, but I can verify them on file. That's fine, I said quickly. She turned the screen slightly, just enough for me to see, and my stomach dropped. There they were, a pay stub, a tax return, a fake employer letter, all with my name on them. My vision tunneled as I scanned the screen. It was too perfect. My job history, my social security number, everything except for one thing, the bank account number. It wasn't mine. Celeste had used a completely different account, one I didn't recognize. And that was it. That was her mistake. Ma'am? The teller asked. I snapped out of it, forcing a smile. Thanks. That's all I needed. I practically ran out of the bank, my heart racing as I called Tess. I got it, I breathed. Got what? The account number. The one she's using to collect the money. Tess was silent for a second, then let out a slow, impressed whistle. Damn, Isla. You really are your sister's worst nightmare, huh? A slow, determined grin spread across my face. She has no idea what's coming. I stared at the bank statement in my hand, the numbers blurring as my mind tried to process what I was seeing. Celeste had gone further than I ever imagined. It wasn't just a few loans or maxed-out credit cards. She had funneled thousands of dollars into a secret account, money she had stolen under my name. It was all right there, the paper in my hands shaking slightly as the weight of it settled over me. She had forged my financial records, faked my job history, even fabricated an entirely different bank account to collect the funds. And she had done it all with such precision, such confidence, that no one had even questioned it. But now I had something she hadn't planned for. Proof. A direct link between her and the fraud. And she had no idea that her entire house of cards was about to come crashing down. Tess sat across from me in the motel room, watching as I flipped through the documents again and again, as if staring at them long enough might make it all sink in. So, she said, stretching out on the bed, what's the play here? You taking this straight to the cops? I exhaled slowly, setting the papers down. Not yet. She raised an eyebrow. Not yet? I leaned back against the headboard, my pulse still racing. If I go to the police now, Celeste will find a way to wiggle out of it. She always does. She'll cry, play the victim, spin some sob story, and somehow make me the bad guy. No. If I do this, it has to be airtight. I need her to admit it, to expose herself in a way she can't take back. Tess smirked. You want her to implode. Exactly. She sat up, intrigued. And how do we do that? I stared at the folder on the nightstand, my mind already spinning with the answer. The family reunion. Tess blinked. You're kidding. I shook my head. Every year, Dad hosts a huge get-together at the house. Everyone shows up, uncles, aunts, cousins, family friends. Celeste thrives at those things. She loves being the center of attention, making sure everyone sees her as the golden child. I clenched my jaw, so I'm going to let her have it. I'm going to let her stand in front of everyone, smiling, basking in all that fake admiration. Tess leaned forward. And then? And then, I said slowly, the plan solidifying in my head, I'm going to rip that mask right off her face. A slow, knowing grin spread across Tess's lips. Damn. I really like you when you're pissed. I didn't smile back, my hands clenched into fists. She deserves worse. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Every moment I wasn't working, I was gathering more evidence, scanning documents, organizing statements, even tracking Celeste's recent transactions. She had no clue I was coming for her. That made it all the more satisfying. The morning of the reunion, I stood in front of the motel mirror, adjusting my blouse, trying to steady the pounding in my chest. This was it. My final chance to take back what she stole. Tess sat on the bed, arms crossed. You sure you're ready for this? I met her gaze in the mirror. More than I've ever been. The drive to my father's house felt surreal. My childhood home loomed at the end of the long driveway, the place that had once been my safe haven now tainted with betrayal. Cars lined the street, relatives already inside, laughing, drinking, reminiscing about old times. Celeste would be in there too, floating through the crowd like she owned the place. I parked and took a deep breath. My hands were steady. My heart was not. Walking through the front door, I was met with the low hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the warm scent of home-cooked food. My father stood near the fireplace, talking with my uncle. When he saw me, his face darkened. I'm surprised you showed up, he said coldly. I forced a smile. It's a family reunion, isn't it? Celeste appeared beside him, dressed in a sleek navy blue dress, a glass of wine in hand, her expression carefully composed. But I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. Isla, she greeted, her voice syrupy sweet. How brave of you to come. I held her gaze. Oh, you have no idea. She tilted her head, feigning confusion. You've put us through a lot lately. She sighed dramatically, glancing at Dad as if she were the one suffering. It must be exhausting for you. I exhaled sharply, steadying myself. You know what's exhausting, Celeste? I pulled the folder from my bag, watching her eyes dart toward it. Being blamed for something I didn't do. Having my entire life stolen out from under me. Being thrown out of my own home while the real criminal walks free. The room quieted. Conversations died. Every eye in the room was suddenly on us. Celeste's smile wavered. Isla, I really don't think this is the time or place. Oh, I do, I interrupted, flipping open the folder. Because if I don't do this now, you'll keep pretending, won't you? Keep lying to everyone. Keep living off money that isn't yours. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My father's face paled. Isla, what the hell are you talking about? I turned to him, my voice unwavering. I'm talking about her. I pointed at Celeste. She stole my identity. She drained my accounts. She took out loans, maxed out credit cards, funneled money into her account, all under my name. Gasps echoed through the room. Celeste let out a forced laugh. This is ridiculous? I held up a printed bank statement. This is a record of every fraudulent account she opened. I flipped to another page. This is her gym security footage, showing her checking in under my name. I held up the final piece. And this? This is a loan application with my name. My signature, except the account number, doesn't belong to me. It belongs to her. Celeste's face drained of color. You think I'm lying? My voice was ice. Go ahead. Deny it. But before you do, just know that I've already contacted the credit bureaus. The fraud investigation is open. Every single account is being flagged. Every dollar you stole is about to come back on you. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time in her life, Celeste had nothing to say. I turned to my father. His face was frozen in shock, his eyes flicking between me and the evidence in my hands. The weight of realization crashed down on him like an avalanche. Celeste, he said, slowly, his voice hollow. Tell me she's lying. Celeste swallowed hard. Dad, but she didn't get to finish, because the truth was finally out, and there was no running from it now. The silence in the room was suffocating. It pressed down on me, thick and heavy, as every pair of eyes darted between me and Celeste. My father's face had lost all color, his lips slightly parted, as if his brain was still trying to process the wreckage I had just dropped at his feet. My hands gripped the folder tightly, my heartbeat pounding in my ears like a war drum. This was it. The moment everything shifted. The moment Celeste finally faced the truth she had spent years burying. But she wasn't ready to let go of the lie just yet. Celeste forced a shaky laugh, the sound brittle, desperate. "Wow, Isla, you've really outdone yourself this time," she said, flipping her hair over one shoulder. Her voice wavered, but she was still holding on to that fake confidence, like it could somehow save her. "This whole conspiracy theory of yours, it's impressive, I'll give you that. But you're forgetting one thing, none of this proves anything." I tilted my head, a humorless smile creeping onto my lips. "Really?" I flipped through the papers in my hand, finding the one I wanted. "Because this is a signed affidavit from a loan officer stating that you walked into that bank pretending to be me. This," I held up another page, "is a sworn statement from the gym manager who saw you check in under my name every single day." My voice sharpened, cutting through her like a blade. "Still not enough for you? Fine. How about the surveillance footage from the bank, Celeste? The one that shows you standing at the counter, using my social security number, signing my name?" Her face drained of color. There it was, the first crack in her armor. "You're lying," she whispered. But it wasn't directed at me, it was directed at herself. I took a slow step toward her. "Am I?" I held up my phone. "Because I have all of this saved. And guess what, Celeste? I emailed it to Dad before I even walked through the door." A collective gasp rippled through the room. My father flinched, his gaze snapping to me. His phone was still in his hand, the screen dark, but I knew the moment he opened it, his world would come crashing down. Celeste's breathing grew ragged. I stepped even closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Checkmate," she snapped. "This is insane," she shrieked, spinning around to face the room. "You're all seriously going to believe this? Her?" She gestured wildly at me, her perfectly manicured nails shaking. "She's been spiraling for years. Ever since she left home, she's been jealous." "No, Celeste," I cut in, my voice deadly calm. "I left home because I wasn't allowed to stay, because you made sure I got kicked out, because you framed me for your crimes." Her mouth opened and closed, her chest heaving. "Face it," I continued, the adrenaline thrumming through me now. "You're caught, and there's nothing you can say that will make them believe you anymore." Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally. But no one moved. No one rushed to her defense. The people who had adored her, who had bought into every perfectly crafted version of her she had ever sold them, were now looking at her like they had never truly seen her before. My father took a slow step forward, his face unreadable. "Celeste," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "tell me the truth." For a second, I saw the flicker of hope in her eyes, that maybe, just maybe, she could still manipulate her way out of this. But then she looked at me, and she knew. There was no escape. The rage took over. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she spat, her entire body trembling now. "You think you're better than me?" She let out a bitter laugh. "You were always the pathetic one, Isla. The quiet, boring little nobody. You should be thanking me." Her voice cracked. "I gave you a life. I made people notice you." I stared at her, my pulse roaring in my ears. "You stole everything from me." Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her hands clenching at her sides. "You had nothing, Isla," she screamed. "I just took what you weren't using." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. That was it. That was the truth, stripped bare. She had never seen me as a person. Just an opportunity. A silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, and then my father exhaled, a sound so hollow it sent a chill down my spine. When I looked at him, his face was completely blank, his hands shaking slightly at his sides. "You did this," he whispered. Celeste flinched. You did this, he repeated, louder this time. His face twisted, his breath coming out in sharp bursts. To your own sister? Dad, don't, he cut her off, his voice shaking. Don't. He turned, rubbing his hand down his face. Jesus Christ. For the first time in my life, Celeste looked small. She swallowed hard, taking a step back. I can fix this, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. I'll fix it. But no one was listening to her anymore. I took a deep breath, releasing the tension that had been coiled in my chest for years. You don't get to fix this, Celeste. I met her eyes, holding her there. You're going to pay it back, every cent. And if you don't, I held up my phone. Then the police get every single piece of evidence I have on you. Her lips parted, her eyes darting wildly between me and Dad. And if you try to run, my voice dropped, cold and sharp. I will destroy you. Her shoulders sagged, her breath shuddering. She knew there was no way out. The golden child had finally fallen. I turned to leave, but before I walked out the door, I looked at my father one last time. I hope, for once in your life, you see me now. And then I was gone. The night air was crisp as I stepped outside, my breath curling in soft white wisps in front of me. The house, my childhood home, the place that once felt like a sanctuary, stood behind me, filled with the ghosts of a shattered illusion. I could still hear the murmurs inside, the hushed disbelief, the low voices of relatives processing everything that had just unfolded. The weight on my chest felt lighter now, but it wasn't gone. Not yet. Not completely. Tess leaned against my car, arms crossed, watching me with quiet curiosity. You did it, she said, her voice steady, lacking the usual teasing edge. She's got nowhere to run now. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Yeah, I did. But even as I said it, the feeling of victory was bittersweet. Exposing Celeste had been the only way. I had no doubt she deserved every ounce of what was coming to her. But it didn't erase the damage. It didn't give me back the years she stole. It didn't change the fact that my father had believed her over me, had cast me out without hesitation, without a second thought. The door swung open behind me, and I turned just in time to see my father step outside. His face was unreadable, but the weight in his eyes was unmistakable. He took a slow step toward me. Isla. I straightened, bracing myself for whatever was coming. There was a long pause, as if he was trying to find the right words. Maybe there weren't any. Finally, he sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. I don't even know what to say. I tilted my head, my chest tightening. You don't have to say anything. His brow furrowed. I do. He let out another breath, shaking his head. I should have believed you. The words came out slow, careful, like they were foreign to him. I failed you. The admission should have meant something. Maybe a part of me had been waiting for it, clinging to the idea that if he just said it, if he finally acknowledged what he had done, things would feel different. But instead, there was only a hollow ache where I had once kept my hope. You didn't just fail me, Dad, I said, my voice quieter now. You threw me away. I begged you to believe me, and you chose her. Without a second thought, regret flickered in his eyes. I know. I let out a humorless laugh. You know? I shook my head, looking past him toward the glowing windows of the house. Do you know what it was like? Being out there alone, knowing that no one had my back? Watching my whole life fall apart? Knowing the one person who was supposed to protect me didn't even care? He swallowed hard. It wasn't that I didn't care, Isla. He sighed, shaking his head. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing? The words tasted bitter on my tongue. You threw your daughter onto the street for something she didn't do. How exactly was that the right thing? He had no answer, just silence. I nodded to myself, letting the finality of it settle in. I'm not looking for an apology, Dad, because there's nothing you can say that changes what happened. What I needed was for you to see me, and you didn't. His shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of my words pressing into him. "I see you now," he said quietly. "It should have been enough. Maybe years ago it would have been. But now, it just felt too late." I took a step back. "I need to go." His expression tightened, something flickering behind his eyes. Fear, maybe? That he had lost me for good? That this wasn't something a few words and a weak apology could fix? He was right. "Isla." He hesitated. "Will you ever come back?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I don't know." Because I didn't know, I turned, walked to my car, and pulled open the door. Tess slipped into the passenger seat without a word, giving me space to process, and I was grateful for it. I started the engine, the low hum filling the silence between us as I pulled onto the street. For the first time in years, I wasn't running away. I was leaving on my terms. The next few weeks were a blur of cleanup. Celeste didn't have a choice. She had to settle the loans, contact the banks, and clear my name, unless she wanted my evidence to land in the hands of law enforcement. I made sure she felt every second of it. The panic in her voice when she called me, the desperate pleading when she realized she wasn't in control anymore. I let her feel it all. And then, just like that, it was over. My name was restored. The debt was wiped clean. The phone calls from debt collectors finally stopped. It wasn't instant. It wasn't easy. But step by step, I took back what was mine. Tess and I sat outside my apartment one evening, watching the sun dip below the city skyline. "So," she said, stretching her legs out in front of her, "what's next for Isla Vaughn?" I exhaled, staring at the horizon. "I don't know," she smirked. "Well, you're not hiding anymore." "That's a start." I smiled faintly. She was right. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I wasn't trapped under the weight of someone else's lies. I wasn't waiting for someone to save me. I had done that myself. I looked at her. "I guess I'll figure it out." She bumped my shoulder lightly. "Damn right you will." I let out a breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Celeste had stolen so much from me. Time, trust, stability. She had torn my world apart, and for a long time I had let the wreckage consume me. But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't the quiet, forgotten sister. I wasn't invisible. I was free. And just like that, the golden child fell. My sister, who had spent years stealing from me, lying to my family, living my life, was finally exposed. She thought she could walk away. She thought she could manipulate her way out, just like she always had. But this time, she had nowhere to run. The question is, what would you have done? Would you have turned her in? Or given her a chance to fix it? Let me know in the comments. 1, if you think she deserved jail, or 2, if you think I made the right choice. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because trust me, this is just the beginning. Identity theft isn't just numbers on a screen. It's the theft of your life. I learned the hard way that trust, even within family, shouldn't be blind. In America, your credit score can define your future, your home, your job, your stability. Protect it. Monitor your accounts. Question suspicious activity. And never assume fraud won't happen to you. If someone tries to steal what's yours, fight back. No one will protect you better than you. And if the people closest to you betray you, walk away. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal.